cells are called adipocytes. It stores fat. So when they store fat, they get bigger. When you lose fat, they get shrink. You don't lose a number of adipocytes unless you do liposuction. Location and function. So fat tissue is located in two different distinct areas. If you ever had dissection, as soon as you cut up the body, you'll see there's a layer, a yellow layer that's covering the entire body. So it's right underneath the skin. Okay? So when it's found underneath the skin, what do you think the function is of it?
Temperature regulation.
Insulation. So it's a protective measure for heat. So it insulates. Then it's another reason, another location is found, it's around internal organs. So if you take a heart, it will have a fatty covering. If you take a liver, it will have a fatty covering. So it's found right underneath the skin, okay, plus around internal organs. When it's found around internal organs, it's there for protection and cushion. Okay? For protection and cushion. So this is basically, this is one fat cell, right here, one adipocyte, and it stores with fat. So when you gain weight, they just bulge up. So instead of being this way, they become this size. When you lose weight, they become this size. Okay? And liposuction is where you remove adipocytes. Cartilage. Function, bone development, body part shape, protects and cushions. Consists of the cellular part and acellular part, or matrix. The cellular part is made up of two cells, chondroblast. So what do you think a chondroblast does? It makes chondro, which is cartilage. Makes cartilage. Then you have chondrocyte. It's chondroblast, chondrocyte. Anytime you hear a cell ending with a cyte, its function is to maintain. Okay, not build, not cut, maintain. So chondrocyte maintains cartilage. Does that make sense? One part of cartilage, it always maintains the matrix. So chondroblast will produce the matrix. Chondrocyte will maintain the matrix. Does that make sense? Yes? Maintains. Maintains cartilage. So right here, this red cells, okay, is chondro. Can you read that? Chondrocyte. Is a chondrocyte. And this purple is a matrix. Huh? Does that make sense? Now, what is the difference between chondrocyte and a chondroblast besides the function? Chondrocyte is just a mature chondroblast. Okay? So chondroblast will make the cell or make the cartilage, okay, and once it makes a cartilage, it's like, okay, I'm finally done making it. Now it turns into a chondrocyte, okay? So what happens, a chondrocyte, anytime a cell ends with a cyte, it's found in a chamber-like structure called lacunae. Chamber-like structure. So what happens is, let's say I'm a chondroblast. I'm like creating the cartilage. As soon as I'm done creating the cartilage, I'm exhausted. So I go and lay down in a chamber called lacunae. Now I'm no longer called a chondroblast, I'm called a chondrocyte. Okay? It's like you always hear when you go into, let's say, any field. Okay, you have the workers, right? If you're medicine, the first year you're basically intern. They give you all of the shitty job. Then you are the third or fourth year, you're like, okay, relax. You give all of your interns all the work to do. Make sense? Same thing, just more mature. So do you see this white space around this chondrocyte? That is the lacunae. So if I see a cell just like this, what would I call this? Chondroblast. If I see the same cell but it's around a chamber, this white space, then it's a chondrocyte. This makes cartilage, this maintains the cartilage. What part of cartilage? Matrix. Make sense? Now we have different type of cartilage. Hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, and elastic. So there are three different types of cartilages: hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, elastic cartilage. And we'll talk more about them in the skeletal system.
What is the red stage on the picture?
Oh, lacunae.
Oh.
That? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, lacunae.
So the white around it
Is the lacunae. Okay? The white space. So this is a lacunae right here. See, it doesn't probably do it. But that white space is the lacunae. It's a chamber-like structure. Now, this slide is just for you if you want to, if you don't want to, it's up to you. It's just, there's so much stuff in connective tissue. Did I miss slides?
Yeah.
I'm not ready to talk about bones or blood. Bone. Now, bone makes up your skeletal system. Its component, again, cellular and non-cellular, which is called the matrix. The cellular part, three different cells. Osteoblast, osteocyte. So what does osteoblast do? Osteo means bone. So osteoblast creates bone. What part of bone? Of course, the matrix. What does an osteocyte do? Maintains bone. Okay? Then you have a third cell. It's called osteoplast. Exactly. Cuts bone. B for build. C for cut. And cyte is to just see over everything. Does that make sense? Huh? So osteoblast builds bone, osteoclast cuts bone, and osteocyte just maintains the bone. Okay? Osteoblast, osteocyte, same cell. Okay? Osteoblast turned into osteocyte. Now osteocyte is found in the lacunae. Okay? Make sense? Non-cellular is a matrix which is made up of calcium and phosphate minerals. Calcium and phosphate minerals make up the matrix of the bone. Now, bone has multiple vessels, blood vessels. Ligaments and tendons don't. This is why if you tear your ligaments and tendons, it takes a long time to heal. But if you break your bone, it's much faster to heal because it actually has blood vessels. Have you ever heard where if you tore something, it never comes back 100%? You always have that weakness? Let's say you tore your ligaments, okay? And you are an athlete and you tore it. And they say that you will never get that functionality as it used to be. It will go up to 80%, but not 100%. The reason is the tendon was dense connective tissue. Now, in the healing process, you no longer form dents, it becomes loose. And as you know, loose doesn't have that much strength. Okay? So this is why when you're trying to do it, you feel weakness there. I tore my ligaments when I was in medical school. I was texting and walking, did not realize the pedestrian ended. So I lost all my balance and I tore my ligaments around my right ankle. Still, I mean, this has been like, what, 10 years? Still, like on a cold day, I would start getting pain there. If I'm running, I have to stop. I can't even sit like the Indian style, you know, with your legs crossed and everything, more than 10, 15 minutes because I get pain there. So it never heals completely. Huh? As I told you, I have tons of stories. Okay, blood. Good for you, not for me. Really painful. Okay, now, blood. Again, it has a cellular part and it has a matrix part. Okay? The matrix part, which is the fluid part, is called plasma. So blood has cells in it and it has the fluid part. The fluid part is the matrix, which the normal proper term is called plasma. Okay? And the cellular part has 3 different cells. Red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. What is the proper name for a red blood cell? Erythrocyte. Erythrocyte. Erythrocyte is a proper name for a red blood cell. White blood cell proper name is leukocyte. Don't you hear leukemia? It's cancer of white blood cells. Platelet name is thrombocyte. Okay? So those are the 3 different types of cells that we find in our blood. They each have a different function. Red blood cell transports oxygen. Okay? White blood cell is your immune system. Therefore, it fights off infections. Okay? So if you go out, if your friend next to you, the student next to you is coughing, and next week you still don't get sick, which cell protected you? White blood cell. Clinical case. I could have put that question on the test, right? Okay, platelets, it clots blood. When you do a paper cut, don't you hold down for 30 seconds and then stops bleeding? So which cell helped you stop bleeding? Thrombocytes, yes. Do you have to know both names? Yes. I could, on the example, platelets or thrombocyte. Or I could put both to see, do you guys realize they're the same cell? Okay? Now, I usually only have one correct answer. I don't say choose all of the following or whichever applies. I only have one. Sometimes I'm a human. I do make mistakes. I will have 2 correct answers. If I have 2 correct answers on purpose, then option E will be A and C. Or, does that make sense? Sometimes if I have 2 correct answers, but all of them are different choices, come up to me, I probably made a mistake. I did not catch that. Okay? Now, plasma is the fluid part. Okay? Now let's look at the difference between artery and vein. Artery carries oxygenated blood, and veins carry deoxygenated blood. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins carry blood to the heart. Does that make sense? So artery, oxygenated blood, takes it away from the heart. Vein contains deoxygenated blood, carries it to the heart. Okay? Make sense? So right here you can see the image. Platelets, which are thrombocytes. White blood cells, which are leukocytes, and we have multiple types of leukocytes, but when we talk about lymphatic and the blood, we'll talk about that. And we have red blood cells right here. We will talk about red blood cells when we talk about the Now this slide, as I said, connective tissue, there's so many branches. It's just at this slide to see you guys do a flow chart and trying to basically get an idea. Okay, but it's for you, I'm not going to collect it. I recommend you do it, make a flow chart, get branches, different branches of connective tissue so it makes more sense. Because it's going to get all jumbled up in your brain. Okay, we have muscle and then we have nervous tissue. Okay. Muscle. specialized cells that shorten, and when they shorten, there's movement. Shorten means they contract. Muscle fibers are long and thin. They are parallel to each other, all locations except in the blood vessels. So always they run parallel to each other. Exception is blood vessels where they run in a circular fashion. Okay? Regardless how they run, all types of muscles, we have different types. Regardless of which type, when you look at the cytosol, in the cytoplasm or the cytosol, you actually find contractile proteins. And when those contractile proteins interact with each other, you have contraction going on, meaning the muscle cell shortens, therefore there's movement. Make sense? We'll talk about more detail later. So the contractile proteins are thick and thin filaments. Thick and thin filaments are the contractile proteins you find in the cytoplasm of muscle. So, yeah. And when the thick and thin filaments interact, you have muscle contraction going on. There are three types of muscles. You have skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Okay? So, from this image, which of the following is skeletal muscle? Skeletal is B. So skeletal you find in your limbs. Your diaphragm is a skeletal muscle. Your chest contains skeletal muscle. Which one is cardiac? It's found in the heart. Cardiac muscle is only found in the heart. And C is smooth muscle. Internal organs, if I'm talking about the liver, if I'm talking about the uterus, if I'm talking about the large intestine, small intestine, all of them, if they contain muscle, it's smooth muscle. Okay? If there's exceptions, I will let you know when we talk about that particular system. Make sense? Quick just stuff about each one. Skeletal muscle, they're voluntary. Meaning you have to think it. If I want to walk, my brain tells me to. Okay, you have to command it. Voluntary, connected to bones via tendons. Movement, okay, when they contract, it causes movement, so like your limbs, your chest, that's when it's found. Cardiac muscle, involuntary. Do you want to tell your heart to contract? No, it automatically does. That's what it means, it's involuntary. Found in the heart, it contains intercalated disc. These are intercalated disc right there. Okay? The intercalated disc contains gap junctions. This is how the electrical impulse can jump from one segment to the next. Okay? This is just one fiber. This is the histology. Smooth muscle. Involuntary. Okay? Hollow is found in hollow organs or tubes. Meaning your fallopian tube contains smooth muscle. So blood vessels, GI tract, uterus, bladder, etc. Fibers run parallel to an arrangement. Exception is blood vessel, where it's circular in fashion. So they're like this. Okay? Why are they circular? Because when the fibers relax, the diameter gets bigger. Vasodilation. When the muscle contracts, it causes the diameter to get smaller, therefore it's vasoconstriction. This is how you tend to compare or alter the lumen, okay, of the vessel, if it gets big or small. It contains gap junctions. This is how stuff is able to go from one cell to the next. Okay, neurotissue. I know you guys are tired. I'm tired of speaking. Okay, almost done. Neurotissue generates and transmits electrical impulses. Where do you find neurotissue? Brain and spinal cord. There's other places which will, and ganglions. Ganglions. Okay. Ganglions are basically neural tissue. So neural tissue you find in the brain spinal cord, which is called central nervous system. Okay, rest of the body is peripheral nervous system. Anytime you find neural tissue, like the cell body, anytime you find it outside the central nervous system, so in the peripheral nervous system, it's called a ganglion. okay? Which I'll get more in detail a little bit later about it when we talk about the nervous system. Now, what is the neural tissue called? The cell, each cell is called a neuron. Neuron is a brain cell. Neuron has three different distinct regions. It has cell body, it has dendrites, and it has axon. So right here is an image of a neuron. Okay? What? Mine's cut off. What is this picture? Cell body. Which letter is that? It's cut out too? Okay. So, let's call it C. Okay? So, this is cell body. Cell body is the brain of the cell. This is where you find all the organelles, mitochondria, nucleus, ER, etc. You find all of that in the cell body. Okay? A is dendrites. Dendrites look like little antennas, right? Their function is to receive signals from other neurons. So it's like antenna of a TV, how it just picks up those signals. Same thing. Dendrites pick up signals from other neurons, and they pick it up and they give it to the cell body. The cell body will decode it. Okay? Then you have an axon, which starts from here all the way to here. Okay? Axon transmits the information to the next neuron. Okay? Dendrites pick it up, give to cell body. Cell body will decode it, and now if it has to give instructions to the next neuron, the signal goes on the axon. Okay? Does that make sense? So one axon is facing another dendrite. That's how it is. So it's not axon, it's axon and a dendrite facing each other. Okay? Now, axon, as you can see, it has distinct areas. So this part, we erase it also. This protruded part is part of the axon, but it's called axon hillock. Axon hillock. This is where the starting point. H-I-L-O-C-K. Oh, FYI, I know this is recorded. Should not say that, but I'm bad at spelling. Okay? You have probably already noticed that. Okay, axon hillock. Does that apply? Okay. Then you have the length of the axon, and right here, you have terminal axon. Terminal axon. Okay? Now, you have glial cells. Did I say that B was part of the neuron itself? No. Neuron is made of axon, cell body, and dendrite. But you have these other cells which are attached to the neuron. They're not a part of the neuron. They're actually cells called glial cells. Neuroglial cells or glial cells. Okay? There are multiple different types, and when we go into the nervous system, I'll tell you. But right now, their main function is to protect and nourish the neuron. Make sense? So glial cells protect and nourish the neuron. And as when we talk about the nervous system, I'll tell you the different types and their function in detail. Huh? Any questions? Yes.
Is B the glial cell?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, and then the axon is
D. So A is dendrites, C is cell body, D is axon, which has multiple parts, and B are the glial cells. Okay. Make sense? Okay, so this is just a photo showing the histology way of the neuron and its segments. Okay, tissue membranes, which I think this might be the last one. Tissue membranes. A layer of epithelial and connective tissue lines each body cavity and forms the skin. 4 different types of membranes. You have serous, mucous, synovial, cutaneous. Serous lines and lubricates cavities to reduce friction between internal organs. Mucus lines the GI tract and the airways. Okay? Your cheek. Inside the cheek, that is mucous membrane. your conjunctiva where females put the lower eyeliner, that's your mucous membrane. Okay. You have synovial membrane, which is between two joints, and it produces, it's for lubrication. Okay, it produces actually fluid. Then your cutaneous, which is your outer covering, which is your skin. Make sense? Now, one thing I would like to say, when you guys study, regardless if you're studying for this class or